Hello, everybody. Salut, and welcome to another French GCSE and iGCSE video tutorial. In this particular video, we're going to look at the writing exam now, and specifically the shorter writing task. So I will take you all through some techniques and plenty of tips on how to answer the shorter writing task. Just firstly, my name's Dhananjay Talwar. I studied French and Italian myself for my MA at the University of Cambridge, and I graduated back in 2015. I've been an educator since that time, ever since then, helping more than 500 students to achieve or exceed their target grade in French GCSE or iGCSE. And I've been a full-time tutor for some 6 years at least now. I have taught other languages, of course, as well, 8 of them for GCSE or iGCSE levels so far, and some at higher levels. I've learned more than 20 languages to different levels myself, 9 at least to fluency. So it's a real passion of mine, of course. And I love motivating and enthusing my students, helping them to get to their goals as well. Right. So as of July 2025, these are the French GCSE and iGCSE exam boards. Just a quick look at these. So 4 exam boards for GCSE French and 2 of them for iGCSE French. There is more overlap and, in terms of the writing exam, even if there are some differences across different exam boards, the writing exam tends to be very similar throughout. Of course, you should still be aware of the exam, of how it will be for your particular exam board, and any potential differences from other exam boards as well, so that you can tailor your preparation. Okay, so today we're looking at the shorter writing task. And the good news is, I suppose, that all of these exam boards in bold here do the shorter writing task, or they have a form of the shorter writing task within their French GCSE or iGCSE writing paper. So all of those examples that were listed before, except for CCEA. So unless you're doing the CCEA exam board, this should be relevant for you. Okay. Now, this is a quick look at the different parts of the French GCSE and iGCSE writing exam. So as mentioned, the writing paper, like all of the papers, of course, does vary. It does change from exam board to exam board. Pearson Edexcel iGCSE, for example, as of July 2025, still has a mixed or combined reading and writing paper, which is different to all of the other exam boards. And of course, no exam board will get you to do all of these tasks because that would be ridiculous, far too much. But these are the potential tasks that could come up in your particular writing exam. Not all of them could possibly come up in one writing exam, and which ones do come up will depend ultimately on your exam board. So if you have any doubts or you'd like to know more details about what will come up, you should definitely check the website for your particular exam board. These potential tasks can include a form filling exercise, a listing exercise, an exercise where you've got to write short answers and sentences in French, where you've got to respond to a photo prompt and write a little bit of feedback or a little bit of a response to that. A mini grammar task, that's new. That's part of AQA's foundation tier writing exam from 2026, I believe. Shorter writing task, longer writing task, and also a translation, which is there for many exam boards too. All of the GCSE exam boards, at least, not the iGCSE ones. And the translation that will come up in the writing paper, if there is one, will be from English into French. We're not going to look at all of these. The videos that I'm doing here will be focused on the shorter writing task, which is what we're looking at now. I do have a different video, though, on the longer writing task, which I highly recommend looking through as well, because that's relevant for absolutely everybody doing French GCSE or iGCSE as well. And translation, that's in brackets, because that is also something that I cover in these videos. But there's a separate video on translation, which covers both translation from English to French and French into English. So again, worth having a look at that too. All of those other exercises listed at the top, those are generally shorter exercises. They're a lot less common as well. So they can come up for certain exam boards, but certainly not for all of them. They tend to be easier and more mechanical in nature, and we're not going to look at those in these videos. Okay, so moving on to the shorter writing task specifically. So the French GCSE or iGCSE shorter writing task is, of course, a task that has to be answered in French. So as a student, you'd have to write an answer in French, of course, and you'd have to address several bullet points. Now, the number of bullet points that you have to address really does vary depending on your exam board. It could be, say, just 2 bullet points. It could go up to about 5 bullet points at most, I believe. But again, try and use material for your particular exam board, material that is going to be as close as possible to your final exam so that you get used to it and so that you're as prepared as possible for what you will come across on the day of your exam. The question itself will relate to a particular topic area. They're not entirely random. The shorter writing task will be based on one of the topic areas for your particular exam board. And as a student, you'd be given a specified number of words to write as well. I will just give you an indication of these for every single exam board too, which I've taken the time to dig out. But yeah, that word count is relevant and is generally important too. You don't necessarily have to stick 100% to that word count because that's very tough. But definitely, I would avoid writing far fewer words or far more words than the indicated word count. And if you're wondering, these are the particular word counts. So yeah, I would definitely make a note of these. This should be very useful information in terms of preparation for your exams. Yeah, definitely. If you've got any doubts, if you want to double check or get more information, then the website for your specific exam board is a great place to start. You'll notice that the number of words varies. Fairly considerably from exam board to exam board. So it's even more important to note how it will be for your particular exam board. For foundation tier, for AQA, GCSE French, there's no longer a shorter writing task, only for higher tier now for AQA. And Pearson Edexcel iGCSE, as mentioned, has a combined reading and writing paper. So both skills are in the same paper. The iGCSE exam boards do not have a distinction between foundation and higher tier at all. And yeah, worth noting, of course, that AQA and Pearson Edexcel GCSE have just changed or updated their syllabus and formatted their exams as well for the exams starting from 2026. Okay, so here are some of my top tips for the shorter writing task. Always try and answer every bullet point directly. There are marks in the mark scheme for doing this specifically, so don't shy away from that at all. I would actually signal to the examiner as clearly as possible that I've answered every single bullet point by even starting a new paragraph every time I move on to the next bullet point. If there's 5 bullet points, then you've got to make sure that you include all 5 bullet points in your answer. And it's not just about including them. You've obviously got to make sure that you include them roughly equally as well. So if you're asked to write, say, 100 words, for example, in your answer, that doesn't mean that you literally have to write exactly 20 words for each of the 5 bullet points, just to give you a theoretical example. Because it would be very difficult to write exactly 20 words per bullet point for 5 bullet points. But I would not write, say, 40 to 50 words for one bullet point and then just 5 to 10 words or 10 to 15 words for the next one. So try to write roughly the same amount for every bullet point. Make sure that you've answered each bullet point directly, no matter how many bullet points there are, and try and signpost as clearly as possible to the examiners that you have answered each bullet point directly, because there are marks available just for that. Likewise, use topic-specific vocab. So topic-specific vocabulary in this case would, of course, be vocabulary to do with the specific topic area that shorter writing task that you're answering is based on. And this can be impressive. There's less pressure in the shorter writing task, at least to show off your language, and to vary your language for the longer writing task, that is important, but less so for your shorter writing tasks. Um, but still, topic-specific vocabulary can make it stand out and push the grades up as well, potentially. Use a variety of tenses. So even though the shorter writing task is less demanding, demands less variation or showing off from the part of the student, um, I would still definitely not just stick to, say, the present tense only. That would be pretty dangerous, regardless of whether you're doing foundation or higher tier. I would at least bring in other tenses such as the future or some past tenses as well. You can vary your tenses beyond that as well. Yeah, but I would say that that is the minimum. Um, Stick roughly to the word limit. So, as discussed, I would use 10% as probably the best indicator. So, if you're asked to write 100 words, if that's what's written in the instructions for your shorter writing task, then I would make sure to write between 90 and 110 words. So, in other words, give yourself about 10% of leeway either side, above or below the word count. And if you stick to that, then you should be safe. Good exam technique is all about giving the examiners no chance of taking marks off you. So for that reason, I would play it relatively safe and stick quite closely to that word limit. I know some students are told other things and told that they can write far beyond the word limit as well, but I would not risk losing marks in a very frustrating way just because you've gone outside of the word count. And lastly, you do not have to show off or vary your language too much. That's specifically for the shorter writing task. For the longer writing task, that's a different ballgame. But for the shorter writing task, you do not have to vary the language that you use too much. So you don't have to chuck in a huge amount of different tenses or more complex verb forms in order to get to the top bracket of marks. Accuracy really is the key and the thing to prioritize for the shorter writing task. That's obviously important for the longer writing task as well. But for the shorter writing task, you can get towards the top bracket of marks without actually varying your language massively. So use some variety of tenses. Of course, some variety in your language, perhaps even topic-specific vocabulary if you can. But I would prioritize accuracy and answering every bullet point for your shorter writing task. Some more tips here on the shorter writing task. Make sure that you check through your writing very thoroughly afterwards. That's really important. Even the best students will often spot mistakes while they're checking their own writing, and then they'll be able to check to check and correct those mistakes as they're checking, and so directly score more marks as a result. Checking is really important, and do set aside some time to check through all of your work and everything that you've written down after finishing all the questions on the paper. That's really important. Like I said, it often boosts students' marks. And while you're checking, particularly for things that you've written in French, you definitely need to check through spelling, grammar, and punctuation. Spelling, punctuation, and grammar, or SPAG, as they're sometimes known. I would also make sure that you have answered the question, that you've indicated which question you've answered very clearly, you've fulfilled all of the requirements of the question, and that you haven't missed out anything in the instructions, or put in any content that is not, say, relevant to the instructions. Memorize key phrases as well. This is something that I mention a lot. One of my big tips for French GCSE and iGCSE students is to memorize a bunch of key phrases that can even be learned 1 or 2 days before the exam, potentially. Many students will struggle with more complex grammar, which they may not have even been introduced to fully in school, such as, say, subjunctive or if clauses or other harder parts of grammar. And a really good way to get around that and even, to boost your mark anyways, even if you're really familiar with all of these parts of grammar, is to memorize set phrases which already, say, contain these more advanced grammar forms, like the subjunctive or if clauses, so that you're not actually trying to memorize how to form and when to use the subjunctive, which would take a lot more time and can be harder. You're just memorizing a bunch of phrases that already include, say, the subjunctive, for example. So you're still able to put the subjunctive into your writing or your speaking as well. This works for the speaking exam too, and still boost your marks without having to practice and revise the subjunctive itself, for example, in a lot of detail. So that's something I hugely recommend. I do have free resources available with lists of the best key phrases that I've compiled from my experience too for French GCSE and iGCSE. Indicate clearly which question you've answered as well. That's really important. You do not want to write a beautiful answer in French, hitting all of the marking criteria as well, and then end up losing lots of marks just because you didn't indicate clearly in your exam paper which question it was that you answered. Um, so do make sure to indicate that very clearly on your exam paper. Normally you'd have to put a cross, say, next to the question that you've answered. So do not skip that, and make sure to check that as well, to check that you have shown them which question you've answered, because you'd normally have a few different options to choose from for the shorter writing task, often. And practice using past paper materials in exam conditions. As you get closer to the final exam, perhaps say a month or two before, I would prioritize these past paper materials and trying to do them in exam conditions too. So without allowing yourself to look up words, sticking to the timing as you would in an actual exam, and so on. That's usually the best form of revision. Okay, I'm going to show you an example now. So this particular example comes from AQA, their 2023 paper. You can see the question itself written out here, the instructions at the top and at the bottom. The number of marks is indicated here. That can be very useful too. Even checking through a mark scheme and understanding how the marks are scored can be very useful for students. And here are the bullet points, which of course you would have to include in your answer, every single one of them. So I will just translate all of this for you. So it says you're writing an article about or on the lives of young people. Describe one, this is the first bullet point, the music that you're listening to at this moment, or right now. Two, your favorite film. Number three, recent Saturday with your friends. In other words, what you did on a recent Saturday with your friends. And number four, your future plans for a celebration. That last one is quite open-ended too. You can choose as the student what celebration you're going to talk about. And then the instructions say write roughly 90 words in French and answer every single aspect of the question. So it reminds you how important it is to do that within the instructions themselves. I'm going to show you my model answer just now for this question. So you can see that the question itself is written out at the top again. And you can see my model answer. So if I were the student, this is how I would go about answering this kind of question. So I'll give you a bit of time to read over this model answer. And I'll just point out some of the things that I've been careful to do and to include as well. So I have stuck roughly to the word count. And I've also been quite careful, as I said, to start a new paragraph for every bullet point. So whenever I move on to a new bullet point, I start a new paragraph just to mark very clearly to the examiners that I'm doing so, and then I'm covering every single one of the bullet points too. You can see that I have varied my tenses somewhat too. I haven't gone hugely overboard, and I haven't really varied my language massively. If you're confident in being able to do so correctly, then you could. But as I said, for the shorter writing task, there's less emphasis on the variation in language and more simply in following the structure, answering every single bullet point, roughly equally, of course. You can see that I've done that as well. I haven't written a lot more for one bullet point than I have for another. And in making sure that your language is accurate and correct in French. So I have used the present tense, for example, j'écoute, I listen to, but also past tenses such as the perfect tense, j'ai écouté, I listened to, and a few other tenses. There's a perfect tense again, perfect tense, but with a reflexive verb, so a slightly more complex verb form perhaps. Nous nous sommes beaucoup amusés. We had a lot of fun. The imperfect tense, so a different past tense, just to vary things slightly. C'était, it was. And then I've used the future tense too. Ce sera mon anniversaire. It will be my birthday, and je fêterai. I will celebrate. And here again, nous irons. We're going to go. We will go. So I've made sure to vary my tenses a bit, and definitely not just stick with the present tense. And yeah, other than that, I've been careful to put in all of the relevant details, make sure my answer is relevant to every single bullet point as well, and contains the necessary information. I haven't varied my language too much, but I have made sure it's very correct, and put in a little bit of variation there as well. Often the bullet points themselves will guide you towards using certain tenses. For example, the third bullet point here, what did you do on a recent Saturday with your friends, is sort of geared towards using past tenses because they're asking you about the past. So it would be more natural to use past tenses there. And many students will follow the guide or the tenses indicated by each specific bullet point, which can help as well. The fourth bullet point talks about your future plans. So it would be natural to use the future tenses or maybe even conditional as well when answering that bullet point. So the bullet points can guide you too. Okay, so moving on to a quick quiz now. Just going to test your understanding of everything that we've seen on shorter writing tasks. So question 1 is, what should you look for while checking over your work? I'm going to give you a little bit of time to think over this before showing the answer. But yeah, of course, particularly for the shorter writing task, what should you focus on while checking? Okay, I'll show the answer. So when you're writing in French, you must always make sure that you fulfill the requirements of the question. So that's definitely one of the main things to check. But also check through your spelling, punctuation, and grammar, or SPAG, very thoroughly, because often students will lose marks in these areas. And if you're checking, you might well spot mistakes that you then correct. Okay, question 2 is true or false. So you do not have to address every single bullet point given for the shorter writing task. Is that true or is it false? I'll give you a bit of time before revealing the answer. Okay, so this is false. Of course, you do have to make sure to answer every single bullet point when answering the shorter writing task. And this is very important because there are marks in the mark scheme for that specifically. So if you've got 4 bullet points, that doesn't mean that you can simply choose 2 or 3 and write only about those. You have to write about every single one, and roughly equally as well. Okay, question 3 now. True or false again? Topic-specific vocabulary is insignificant for the shorter writing task. So I'll just give you a bit of time to think through whether it's true or false, and then show the answer. Okay, I'll show the answer now. So this again is false. Each shorter writing task relates to a particular topic area, of course. So using topic-specific vocabulary, of course, it's going to have to be relevant to that particular topic area that your shorter writing task is based on. It can be useful in a shorter writing task and can help boost your marks. If it's a topic area for which you don't know specific topic-related words, then that's okay. There are other ways to score marks, particularly for your shorter writing task, where accuracy is normally the key. But yeah, topic-specific vocabulary is certainly not totally insignificant and can be used to increase your marks. Okay, and finally, question 4. How much do you need to vary your language for the shorter writing task? Interesting one. I'll give a bit of time to think through this before showing you the answer. Okay, so you do not need to hugely vary your language at all for the shorter writing task. Using some more advanced phrases can definitely still be beneficial, but accuracy is the most important. So if you do use more complex phrases, try and throw in, say, a subjunctive, for example, or an if clause, present participle or something, then make sure that you're confident in being able to do so and to use those forms correctly in French, because otherwise, of course, you won't get the marks for that. You can definitely score right towards the top marks for the shorter writing task without massively varying your language, just prioritizing accuracy and answering every single bullet point as well. Okay, so if you've got any questions about any of this, or for information on more personalized help, which I do offer as well, you can get in touch by email or Facebook or Instagram. Yeah, so that's my email address again. I post every single day on Facebook, Instagram, and even LinkedIn about my love for languages, naturally, I'm sharing my passion, ways of learning languages, but also a lot to do with GCSE and iGCSE as well, for French and for some other languages. A lot about exam technique, how to prepare for the exam as best as possible. I do have many resources available too, including free resources for French GCSE and iGCSE students. Um, I run a Facebook group, which is free to join, for students of French GCSE and iGCSE and parents too. And yeah, I do one-to-one classes, group classes, courses, and plenty more. So if you'd like to know more about any of that, don't hesitate to get in touch.